Do you remember this ad?
Okay, which one of you losers nicked my deodorant?
Who'd want to smell like you?
Who would smell like you?
Nice, mature.
Zip it, shrimpy.
Dan.
Eat a Snickers.
Why?
Because you turn into a right diva when you're hungry. Better? Better.
You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers. Get some nuts.
In the last few weeks, I've had something of a revelation occur, and it is this. My daughter gets hangry. If you're not familiar with the term hangry, it's a combination of the words hungry and angry. And my daughter does this. And it's something I think we all do. As stated in the ad previously, Snickers made a whole thing on it. You're not yourself when you're hungry. And it's something that takes over us all. But what's happened to make this something that I think is worthy of spending some time talking to you guys about? Well, we've gone through a number of times here. It's well established. My daughter does struggle with her emotions and she gets very angry. We take a step back and we look at that internal cup, if you like, bucket, whatever, of our emotional capacity, and it sits within us. And these can be positive or negative emotions, but we've only got so much capacity to take it. And we're at a time of year where this comes into play even more, because basically as the world moves into Christmas, all the lights go up, the Christmas songs start playing, everything's a bit louder, people are cheery, there's the anticipation of Christmas coming up, and for my daughter there's that excitement, what's it going to be like on Christmas Day?
Being too close to people, smelling them, having them touch me. Colours are a lot brighter at Christmas. Everything's in your face, it's flashing, it's bigger, it's brighter, it's bolder, it's better, it's noisier, it's all kind of jacked up to be that way, isn't it?
And we all had this perfect picture in our heads, don't we, that Hollywood has thrust upon us about what Christmas should look like and what it all means. The ads in the UK are all the same. They come out with these amazing, fantastic stories. Everyone waits for the John Lewis ad or whatever it, the Coca-Cola truck that comes in and suddenly it's Christmas. When that Coca-Cola, my wife says it, when that Coca-Cola truck comes, that's Christmas started. That's when we know. And I've just got to say, it's not as bad in the UK as back in Australia. Back in Australia, they don't do Halloween quite the same way they do here. They don't have fireworks night. They don't have Thanksgiving. So basically mid-September, all the Christmas shopping starts and all the decorations go up, and you get 3.5 months of Christmas every year. And by the time it comes around, from speaking personally, it's like, please just make this stop now. Make it stop. I can't take any more. And you're just gagging for Christmas to get over. We have a strict rule in our home that no Christmas decorations are to go up before December, because I just can't hack it. It needs to, Christmas is in December, and that's when decorations should go up. It comes back to our emotional cup. At Christmas especially, at this time of year, our emotional cup fills up. And it's positive. We're looking forward to something, and it's happy, and there's lots going on, and it's vibrant, and it's joyous. And that's great. Except that it's not always great, because once we've got that emotional cup full, no matter what it's full with, whether it be our negative emotions, anxieties, struggles, anger, frustration, or if it's the positive things, looking forward to something, birthdays, Christmas, whatever it is, an event coming up, for my daughter, that presents something of an issue. Now, we've talked before on this channel about interoception. Interoception is basically the internal workings of our body and how our brain interprets that. So hunger is an interoceptive function. Our brain telling our bodies we're hungry, and therefore we go out and eat, grab a Snickers or whatever it is that you particularly choose to do. What comes into play with my daughter though is that internal cup of anxiety is almost always at its peak. It's almost always full. So as that, for myself, that cup can empty and flow as the day goes on. And when it's overflowing, that's when we hit meltdown. That's when we hit frustration. When we make mistakes, we do things we regret. We say something we wish we hadn't said.
I shouldn't have said that. I should not have said that.
Thump a wall, whatever it is, we let our frustrations out. And afterwards you're thinking, what was I doing? What was going through my head then? For my daughter, that cup is almost always at its peak. And so it only takes something very small and it all comes flying over the edge and we get a meltdown. She has to try very hard to repress that. And when you've got kids who mask, so my daughter masks very heavily, she masks at school, which means that it appears she's doing okay, but once she gets home and hits the home, it all comes out. She's in a safe place. She doesn't have to mask anymore and she can be her authentic self, and out it all comes. And she gets so upset and frustrated and things kick off very easily. Now, the other day my daughter came home. She'd not had the best day, and she'll tell me that. It was a horrible day for this reason, that reason. It's like, fair enough. Okay, what can we do? But she was just sort of letting it all out as she came in talking, and she said to me she hadn't eaten since 10:30. Now, for me, that rang some alarm bells. Obviously, that why aren't you eating? There's lunch at school. Why aren't you eating your lunch? Turns out she doesn't like the lunch they provided, and she was refusing to eat it. So it created this issue of her becoming hangry. And what it is that her brain doesn't process hunger in the same way that yours or mine might do. When I'm hungry, my body tells me clearly that I'm hungry and I go and get something to eat, maybe a little over enthusiastically. But for my daughter, she can kind of ignore that because the hunger pangs don't hit in the same way they do for me. And it gets misinterpreted. But what happens then is the body's getting hungrier and hungrier, and her ability to deal with that emotional regulation inside that cup becomes harder and harder. Trying to repress that level and keep it low becomes harder and harder. So she becomes hangry. But what that does is lead to instant meltdowns, because we talked about it before. She's like a swan. She might appear to be coping on top, but underneath the legs are paddling away. And it only takes something very small, because that cup is so full, it only takes the smallest amount and it all comes spilling over. So she came home, she'd been masking all day, she'd been frustrated, and she was incredibly hungry, but hadn't recognized it. And it led to a meltdown. Obviously, my response was to straight away talk to the school, and we've dealt with making sure she is eating, because that was a big issue for me. The school were very good, and this isn't me trying to sledge the school for anything they did or didn't do, but my concern was there, obviously, that if she's not eating at school, she's going to have issues at school, because that ability to hold on till the end of the day is going to diminish and diminish, which I don't like anyway. I don't like the fact that she has to mask, but it's a reality of her existence. But it means that when she comes home, it's that much more challenging. And as discussed, my daughter can get very violent when she's in a meltdown scenario, when she's at that stage in her brain, in her ability to cope with those emotions. She goes into pretty violent meltdowns, things get broken, people can be hurt. And so it's something we have to manage very, very, very carefully. I hadn't quite picked that hangry was the issue, but it's been something I've been noticing more and more over the last few months, is that if she's edging towards that, if I can give her a snack, I'll try to make them healthy, but if I can give her something to snack on or something to eat, it helps regulate and helps her to become more able to cope with her emotions. It helps her to become less hangry. And by taking that anger out of the hungry, taking the hungry out of the anger, feeding her something so that she is then no longer hungry and therefore no longer as angry, it helps manage. And we had this meltdown, and it was not as dramatic as some have been, but it wasn't great. And my instant thing was, okay, we're going to go to the shop and let's get you something, let's get you a treat. I thought my best way to do this is to give her something she wants to eat. So we went out and she loves these Sainsbury's cookies. Not sponsored by Sainsbury's, but Sainsbury's, if you're listening, reach out. She loves the Sainsbury's cookies. And so I went out and got some. We're in Sainsbury's and I'd already scanned the item. I use their app on my phone. So I just whip around. Because I'd scanned it, and because she was just so agitated, she was agitated as we walked around the shop. She was already getting heightened again. Everything was worrying her. She was getting frustrated. All those telltale signs that we were heading down a path to another potential meltdown. So I ended up pulling out a couple of cookies and said, just have these now. And I'm not kidding, it took about 60 seconds between that heightened level where we were heading towards a fairly severe meltdown, I think, to her being actually chirpy and quite happy. The change was dramatic. I was stunned at the difference. It really twigged me onto this. My daughter has sensory processing disorder. We talked about that on the channel before. We talked about sensory processing disorder, but when it comes to those interoceptive signals that our brain sends, she misinterprets them. They don't process the same way. And because she's hanging on to this hunger, and how she explains it is that she feels sick. And so she'll often come to me, I feel sick. And for a long time, it was like, okay, well, let's try and do something about it. And I hadn't twigged at that point that it was actually the sensory processing and that her hunger, and you probably experienced this yourself. I've experienced it where, when you're that hungry, you kind of feel sick. It gives that feeling, but my brain knows to differentiate that I really need to eat something now because it's affecting my psychological, not just my physiological, but my psychological state. Because she's not getting that, she's getting that sick feeling, but her brain is just going, you feel sick. And so it can turn the hunger off in the sense that her brain isn't processing that she's hungry, and so she ignores it. However, the physiological needs of needing some food are still there. And in fact, the body's still sending these signals out, but because they're being misinterpreted, she ignores it, and therefore it heightens. And so she gets to this hangry state, and hangry for her is a lot more significant than hangry for, say, myself or for somebody else. Her state of being hungry leads to a much stronger form of hangry. Her anger becomes a lot more amplified because she doesn't have that ability to emotionally regulate the same way that I do. It was a true eureka moment for me. I just hadn't twigged this before. And it's something that has led to me being able to instill this in other ways. I've started to recognize now that if we're going down that path, if I've got some, I do try to make them healthy. It's not easy because, when she's in that state of mind, telling her to eat some carrot sticks isn't going to work. But, I do try to keep things like cereal bars on hand and stuff like that, where she can, at least they're whole grain and you've got something healthy in there and she's not necessarily just eating something that's unhealthy. But the difference is that I can then manage what's coming. And, we talk about these emotional triggers. We talked about it so many times on this channel. It's something you often hear about is trying to focus and understand and recognize those emotional triggers. We know when things are going downhill. Now that can be really challenging because, as I say, that emotional cup is already pretty full. And so for my daughter, it only takes a little bit and it all comes spilling over. When it seems like she's just suddenly out of nowhere melted down, that's not the case. She's actually been, if you're likening it to a motorway, she's been cruising along at 68, 69 miles an hour. And it only takes that little bit and then suddenly she's speeding. And it's like that with her emotions. She's pretty much at capacity, but it's being managed. But it only takes that little bit to go over, and that's where the meltdown occurs. For her, that's happening on a constant basis. And if she's hungry, which leads to her being hangry, that's when these emotions spill over more quickly. It's like you turn the tap up, so there's more flowing. And that little capacity that's left fills that much faster. And so we go into these meltdowns a lot more rapidly and a lot more significantly. So it's one of those things, it was a small thing by the fact that all it takes is having some readily available things to maybe graze on through the day that keeps her from going into that hangry state. It helps her to draw back and go, okay, I can manage now. Thanks, Dad. I'm okay now. And she is. It's made a huge difference. It's something I've been able to pass on to the school. So when she's at school now, she goes in and she has some snacks which are there for her and she can graze on them through the day. Now, we've had issues with my daughter getting to school because she, often will get through the day, half a day, and then want to come home.
I want to go home.
She knows if she kicks off at school, that's what happens, but she hasn't been getting to that stage. She had a day off yesterday, but it's her first day in 2.5 weeks, which for her is significant. She did 2.5 weeks solid in school, and she really did need a mental health break yesterday, and so I was able to provide that. But 2.5 weeks in school is significant for her without any phone calls to say she's asking to come home or she's feeling sick or she's doing something that would cause her to have to go home or for them to have to call me and get her go pick her up. So it's having that added benefit as well. When she comes home, she's a lot more regulated. And instantly, the first thing is get her a snack. So that as she comes home, if there's been time in between and she's feeling that hunger but not recognizing it, to avoid getting that hangry state, it's great. I can just give her something and we can talk and then get on with what we're going to do for our afternoons and evenings. It's made such a difference in our household. It's made a difference to me because I feel like there's something I can do about this stuff which I wasn't able to do before. It's broadened my understanding. And most importantly, it's helped her. And we can talk about all the rest of this stuff, but in the end, she's the one who's feeling these emotions. She's the one who's dealing with it. She's the one who goes into that state where she's just that full of anxiety and emotion and frustration that she's melting down, and she hates it. The aftermath of every meltdown we have is instant regret and self-judgment from her. She's the worst critic with this kind of stuff, and she sees what she's done and she scares herself with what she's potentially capable of, I think. But it's made such a difference in that we're starting to bring that back. So she's not feeling that same level of, really increased anxiety and anger, and she's able to manage that emotional cup just that little bit better. But just that little bit better makes a big difference in her everyday life. So I wanted to bring this to you because it's something that hit me and something we experienced, and I thought, you know what, this is the kind of thing this channel is all about. If it's helped us, maybe it's going to help some of you guys. If it has done, please do go share this, hit the like and subscribe. And as I say every time, I don't like asking, but you'd be surprised the difference it makes to getting these messages out there for people who need to hear them to actually hear them. So please do that. It makes a huge difference. Be just a personal favour to me. I will see you again on the next episode, but in the meantime, please do stay safe.